today's video, I am showing you a design that I say is the stuff nightmares are made of because it is a spider skull. So it's like a spider is living in a skull and all of its legs are coming out. So I have the little spider face inside the mouth of the skull, and it is really, really freaky. I could have taken it like a step further and done like some more details to the spider's face or extra details to the legs or something just to make it even creepier, but I decided enough was enough and I didn't want to make it even more freaky than it already is. If you are somebody who likes spiders and freaky things, Helen's design is also really, really freaky for this one. The way that she has all of the spider's legs just looks so like skinny and delicate, which for some reason adds to the creepiness. So definitely check out her video too, and don't forget to click subscribe, see all of my future Halloween designs as well.
Begin with an overlay of cover pink acrylic down the entire nail. Make sure that you build in your apex and all of your stress points and your strength in this so that you don't have to worry about the nail underneath being fragile. That's one thing that whenever I look at nail art online, a lot of times I notice that there isn't a really nice built-in structure. So I'm going to file the nail into shape with my e-file, and that's especially a crucial thing if you're sculpting this on somebody to wear. So now I'm going to start sculpting my little skull with white acrylic on a nail form backing. So I placed down a couple beads of white acrylic and I'm going to let those begin to set. You don't want to wait too long, but if you start too soon, you're just going to, be wasting time because it isn't going to hold its shape. So wait until you can start seeing it turn matte. Don't wait until it's matte, but until you can start to see that transition. And then take the tip of your brush and just start kind of rolling it up into a ball. Get it as close to a sphere as you possibly can. It's super awkward on the nail form backing and the brush, I understand, but just, do what you can. And just kind of keep playing around with it until it doesn't, the shape doesn't change very much and it starts to really hold on to that spherical essence. Then take a small dotting tool, and dip it into some white powder so it isn't going to stick to the acrylic, and then use that to carve in the eye sockets. And just worry about the eye sockets right now because this is just the top base of the skull and we're going to be building off of it. So you don't have to deal with nasal cavities or anything else at this point if you don't want to. Just really focus on those eye sockets. And then after you have those, let that set up 100%, and then you can take it off, and then I'm going to start adding a little bit more detail to my skull. So I'm going to start adding cheekbones to it and just kind of sculpt little bit by little bit on top of it. And you're going to notice that it starts sort of coming to life at this point. It does take some time, and it is a little bit tedious adding all these pieces to it since you're kind of building up off of just a little bit, especially here, or you're not, making a big adjustment to it. You're just doing these little tiny things here and there until the skull really comes together. So I added those cheekbones down below, and then I'm going to add just a little bit of brow bone acrylic around those eye sockets that were pressed in with the dotting tool, and just add little bits. You can make your skull very realistic and do a lot of, detail on it as much as you can, or you can make it super, super cute and keep it simple. I went sort of halfway down the middle, fairly realistic, but I didn't overly detail it as far as like realistic coloration or anything like that. So you can, like I said, find your own balance with whatever it is that you prefer. Now this part gets a little funny because you're sculpting it directly like up and off, but you need to add the top row of teeth to your skull. So you're going to be giving him his, upper chompers. So lay that little bit of acrylic down and then sort of pull it forward and push it back, and pull it forward and push it back. And that will slowly bring it out and keep it fairly thin and work it, forward. And then carve in some little teeth into it. It's still very wet at this stage, so it's very impressionable. Now in a nail form backing, once again, we're going to be sculpting the lower jaw and the spider's face. So sculpt the lower jaw with white acrylic. So I just laid a smaller bead down, much smaller than what we started making our skull with, and then sort of just carve it in. It's almost like a petal shape. It's pretty basic as far as that goes. A lot easier to deal with than making your skull. I did hold my skull up to it though to make sure that it was the right size. As you can see, I just took a tweezers and kind of, eyeballed it, make sure it looks right. Then keep messing around with it. And then with brown acrylic, I'm going to be doing my spider's face. So I'm going to lay down that bead of the brown acrylic, and then I'm going to take and just give him a couple little fangs coming off the front of his face. So I'm going to make sure that that face is a nice shape. I always like to set my acrylic down and then wait until it starts to look matte before I start messing around with it, especially on a nail form backing. A nail form backing is a very slippery surface, and so the acrylic tends to slide around a little bit more than it would otherwise. And so it takes a little bit more time before the acrylic starts to become really workable. And so if you just have a little patience, then it's a lot easier. So now I'm going to cut 8 pieces of a jewelry wire, and this is going to be the base for my legs. And you can measure them and say do 1 centimeter for each leg chunk, or you can eyeball it and say it's close enough, which is what I did. Up to you, it depends on how much you trust your eyes. But then I'm going to bend my wires into my little spider leg shapes. And so this is the shape that I went with. So I don't know if you guys you'll see it in a moment. So it's like there's 4 bends in it, and it goes up, down, yeah, you'll see. But then glue the lower jaw to the nail about in the middle, and then you're going to start gluing all those legs in place. So that is where it begins. So that first little flat, like the small flat edge, is just a base for it to glue down to the nail. It isn't really part of the leg that you see even in the end, so don't worry about that necessarily as far as how big it is if it matches each one. But then glue the rest of the legs down. And different spiders have different leg shapes, so you can look at what kind of spider you want to do, or if you're like me and don't even want to think about Googling spiders to find a reference photo, you can wing it, which is what I did. And so you can glue all those legs in place. I think they look really, really cool right now. Silver, especially, like you could make an adaptation and do like a steampunk spider skull, or even just a steampunk spider. You could get rid of the skull element of it and just do a spider. That would be so cool. But then I'm going to secure all those legs and apply some clear acrylic around the base of each leg to make sure that they are going to stay exactly where they are, which is extra important when you see this next step. So now I'm going to take my e-file and a bit I don't really like, and I'm going to start smoothing out the ridges of where all of those legs meet in the middle, because it's really lumpy and it's just not a good platform for the skull to be attached to. So very carefully just go through and file those. And like I said, use a bit you don't love because it is really bad for your bit. Now I'm going to take some brown gel polish and I'm going to be painting my spider legs brown. If you wanted to leave them silver, like I said, that would be super cool. But for me, I have a brown spider that's living inside that skull, so I really need my legs brown. So a quick layer of brown gel polish over the legs is what you need. Make sure that the brown gel polish you're using is a fairly pigmented one so that you don't have to do multiple coats, just to make it easier on yourself, because it is kind of a process to get in and around all of those little legs. And definitely use a art brush instead of going straight from the bottle with the bottle brush, because that would not be delicate enough to get in and around all of these little joints of the legs. After you have all of those painted, you can cure that, and then you're going to need to apply a layer of gel sealer over those legs too. And I say gel sealer instead of gel top coat for this particular circumstance, because gel sealer is much thinner and it isn't going to make the legs look extra bulky necessarily, whereas a gel top coat may. So now I'm going to just test it, and I'm going to glue my skull together. So first I just kind of put my skull in there to make sure I got the right angle on it. And then with the tweezers, I'm going to glue that skull down, leaving a gap so that the jaw is open, so that his mouth is nice and open and you can see kind of into it. And after that glue has really taken hold, but you should be able to feel it with your tweezers, all of a sudden it'll really grab. I can feel it. You can just tell when the glue is like, okay, I've got this now, you can let go. And then glue the spider's face into that mouth, and then take some brown acrylic and apply it into the really like far back throat area to fill out the spider shape. And that's also going to make sure that your skull and everything is nicely attached together. And add a little bit more details, and then I'm going to take acrylic paint and detail the rest of my little skull guy. So I'm going to take some gray acrylic paint, and I'm going to be adding some shading on my skull. This is one of the stages where I said that you can go super detailed or really tone it back and keep it cutesy. It's up to you. So blend in as much shading and dimension as you would like. I absolutely love painting skulls. One of my favorite paintings on my art channel is from a while ago, and I call him my skull butler. And so he's just a skull with a top hat on. He's got a crow on his shoulder, and it's one of my just favorite fun. It was a really fun painting to do, and I love that skull. So if you want to see a really cool skull painting, if if you're like me and think that stuff is just kind of cool, I will send you over to that video and I'll put a link to it in the description box below, so check that out. But then go through and just do some little black details on your skull, some outlines here and there. Make sure his teeth are nicely visible. Fill in his eye sockets with black, his nasal passages with black. Do some shading on the lower jaw. Even though it is really kind of hiding under there, you can still add details to it. You can detail your spider's face. You can give her some eyes, 4 or 8 or 2 or whatever number it is that you'd like to pick for number of spider eyes. And then after you're done with all of that, apply some gel sealer over the nail itself to make sure that that is really nice and shiny, and that'll contrast very well against that skull. Cure it and then apply some matte top coat over your skull and over your spider's face. And that is it. This nail is seriously crazy. It is the stuff that nightmares are made of, because just the whole skull spider combination. I hope you guys like it as much as I do. Don't forget to check out that video in the description box as well as Helen's videos, and I will see you next time. Bye!